Sometimes the quietest places hide the darkest secrets. A lone man on a night shift, a silent warehouse, and an unknown presence lurking in the shadows. What started as an ordinary night soon turned into a chilling nightmare. What did he see? What was following him? And why does the darkness never let him go? This is the story of a night he will never forget, and one you won't either. The night shift was never my first choice. It wasn't the work that bothered me, it was the silence. The kind of silence that wraps around you, making every sound feel louder and every shadow more sinister. The warehouse was enormous, endless aisles of crates and shelves that stretched into darkness. It was a lonely place, and on that night, it felt even lonelier. I started my shift the same way I always did. The control room was small, with old monitors flickering on the desk. I sipped my coffee and leaned back, watching the screens. It was all routine empty hallways, still crates, nothing unusual. At least that's what I told myself until I saw it. On one of the screens, a shadow moved. It was quick, just a flicker at the edge of the camera's view, but it was enough to make my stomach tighten. I rewound the footage, but there was nothing there. I blamed my tired eyes and tried to brush it off, but the unease settled in. Around midnight, the first sound came. It was faint, a rhythmic tapping that echoed through the warehouse. At first, I thought it was a rat or some loose pipe, but the sound was too deliberate. Tap, 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 tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the far corner of the building. I grabbed my flashlight and headed out to investigate. The halls were colder than usual, and my footsteps echoed in the silence. The tapping grew louder as I approached, leading me to an old storage room at the back of the warehouse. The door was slightly ajar, the metal hinges rusted and creaking as I pushed it open. My flashlight beam swept across the room, illuminating dust covered shelves and empty boxes. The tapping had stopped. Hello, I called out, my voice trembling. No answer. I turned to leave, but then I felt a chill on the back of my neck, like someone was standing right behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty. My flashlight flickered, and for a split second, I thought I saw something in the corner of the room. A shadow, tall and thin, but when I shone the light directly on it, there was nothing there. I backed out of the room, my heart racing, and hurried back to the control room. The tapping didn't return, but the feeling of being watched stayed with me. At 2 a.m., the camera started to glitch. One by one, the screens flickered with static. I cursed under my breath, trying to adjust the settings, when suddenly one of the feeds cleared. The camera showed the main storage aisle, and standing in the middle of it was a figure. It wasn't moving, just standing there facing the camera. My breath caught in my throat. The figure was tall and unnaturally thin, its limbs too long, and its head slightly tilted, like it was observing me. I leaned closer to the screen, my hands shaking. The figure didn't move, but I could feel its gaze, even through the monitor. And then, in an instant, it turned and walked out of frame. I grabbed my flashlight and reluctantly made my way to the main storage aisle. My heart pounded as I approached, the beam of light shaking in my hand. The air was colder here, and the faint smell of rot lingered. Is anyone there? I called out. No answer. I turned the corner and froze. The figure was there, standing at the end of the aisle. Its back was to me, but something about its posture was wrong. Its shoulders were hunched, and its head was tilted at an unnatural angle. Hey, I shouted, trying to sound brave. You're not supposed to be here. It didn't move. I took a step closer, my flashlight trembling. I said. Before I could finish, it turned. Its face was blank, no eyes, no mouth, just smooth, pale skin. My flashlight flickered again, and the figure started moving toward me, its jerky, unnatural steps making my stomach churn. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. The figure moved faster, its long limbs stretching unnaturally as it closed the distance. I turned and ran, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I could hear its footsteps behind me, echoing through the halls. Somehow I made it back to the control room and slammed the door shut. For a moment, there was silence. Then came the tapping. It was on the door now, slow and deliberate. Tap, 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 tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. My heart pounded as I backed away, clutching the flashlight like it could somehow protect me. The tapping stopped, but the silence was worse. I turned back to the monitors, hoping for some explanation, but what I saw made my blood run cold. The figure was in the control room, not outside the door, but standing right behind me. I spun around, swinging the flashlight wildly, but the room was empty. The air was thick with the smell of rot, and the temperature had dropped even further. I didn't wait to find out what would happen next. I grabbed my keys and ran for the exit. The hallways seemed to stretch endlessly, the shadows closing in around me. I could feel it behind me, its presence pressing down on me, but I didn't dare look back. When I finally burst out into the cold night air, I didn't stop running until I was in my car. I never went back to that warehouse. The company called me the next day, asking why I abandoned my post. I didn't have an answer for them, at least, not one they would believe. All I know is that whatever was in that warehouse wasn't human. And sometimes when I close my eyes at night, I still hear it. Tap, 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 tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap.